or part of the tribes of Israel. Okay. And then it goes on across different countries. He goes to China and he finds a small sect there that have been there for centuries, left to their own ideal, right? And they can make matzah bread, do all the traditions, customs, etc. And this is what this Jew that's tagging along with this Jovovich guy, and he says, "So, well, we never taught you that. Who taught you that? You know, we haven't revealed anything to you." And they says, "Well, it's been in our tradition for thousands of years." So he says, "Well, then you must be, because of what you're doing, you must be true Jews, or one of the lost tribes of Israel." I think they may have said they were Manasseh or something like that. Not too sure, can't remember. So yeah, he found Asian ones, and then he went to India and he found an Indian sect, and they did similar things, or the same things. And this Jew says, "Well, as with the Asians, we haven't revealed anything to you. How did you know how to do this or this sort of stuff?" And they says it's been in our traditional custom for centuries, right? So he says, "Oh, then you must be the lost tribe." And then he went and found all the 10 tribes. This Jovovich guy, timeline archaeology guy, Dutch Jew. So he verified that they, through this Jew that was taken along with him, that they were obviously from the lost tribes. They were true Jews. So this Jamaican reggae 12 tribe of Israel claim these posters, these flags, etc., whatever, and saying that the Mexicans, Pacific Islanders, New Zealanders, whoever, Latinos, are of the 12 tribes of Israel, is actually wrong. Okay, they may be possibly descendants, but making that statement that it's only the Mexicans, the Latinos, Pacific Islanders, New Zealanders, etc., of the true 12 tribes of Israel and nobody else, is incorrect. If this video, which appears true, right, this Jovovich quest for the lost tribes, and he finds them through all the records, etc., this personal research, etc., that they are from China, who he said be very wary of them because they are militant. They had guns, they're armed to the teeth. If they had gone back to Israel, they may have got trigger happy, and he claims might have started a Armageddon there. And then he had the Indian ones, etc., and they proved themselves to be true Jews, or of that lost 10 tribes of Israel. So, yeah, which one are you going to believe? I'd go with the Jovovich guy, personally, because he's found the evidence. These others are just making these claims, which aren't necessarily true. Okay, Hamakel hands over the reins to Bishop. The Jewish diaspora is often dated to 63 AD, when Rome overtook Judea and eventually banned Jews from setting foot in Jerusalem. The dispersal of Judaism was far and wide, spreading as far as Persia and into Europe. There are groups of Jewish Ethiopians who claim to be descendants of King Solomon, but scholars have dated their existence only back to the late Middle Ages. Hamakel hands over the reins to Bishop Jean, who storms into the full-fledged sci-fi scenarios. Even Mormons, who believe a group of Israelites came to the New World in 600 BC, concede the major events of European history. Yeah, they claim the tribe of Lehi or something like that. Was it the Tower of Babel? When they were spread out, all over the earth, the people spread out all over the earth with different language, had the records, and they reached that this one family of that group ended up sailing off to the Americas, and met up with the Indians there or something, and had a bit of a battle or something, and finally converted them, something like that, to Mormonism, right? That Mormon ideology, etc., according to the Book of Mormon. Go read it for yourself, don't take our word for it, because we often do make mistakes. You go by memory here. It would take even longer in this video if we went right through the whole Mormon Bible and brought you those statements. Hamakyle hands over the reins to Bishop Jean, who storms into the full-fledged sci-fi scenarios. Even Mormons believe a group of Israelites came to the New World in 600 BC, conceding the major events of European history. But the Israelites throw out the whole shebang. It turns out that many of the Hebrews, targeted by the Roman army, found ways to stick it up, even claiming seats of power in the empire of their oppressors. If you want proof, just look at one of the old coins. Septimus Severus, or Severus, clearly was here in cornrows. Maybe they had the style in those days. Maybe they stole it from Africans. Who knows? Our Thusian loved to keep it jiggy, says Jean. The apex of black power in Europe, it seems, came during the Middle Ages. Jean explains that modern historians call those years the Dark Ages because black people were in charge. Well, it was actually called the Dark Ages because Mohammedans or Islam rose to power. They went to Africa. Supposedly the Africans were depressed, saddened because of the Roman masters, and they were cruel to them, etc., etc. They wanted to be freed, so the Mohammedans or Muslims said, well, we'll kick their butt for you, we'll set you free on the condition that you convert to Islam. So these Africans apparently said yes. These Arabs defeated the Romans, and then they said to these people, right, convert to Islam. So they did, and then they said, right, you also have to join our armies and fight for us, right? Which these people did, not really liking it, but they went to Europe, conquered Spain, etc., and most of Europe, and ruled for like 500 years or so, and these Europeans had nowhere to go. Right? That was the Dark Ages. It was a very bad time for them, because they had no land, they had nowhere to go. Okay. At that point, go check out their history. Okay, he says the Dark Ages were called that because black people were in charge. No, wrong. During this time, black Israelites made many accomplishments, among them creating the English language. Okay, supposedly it came from a mix of races, the Arabic, the Aramaic, etc., etc. Jean's speech becomes something of a disorganized litany, with slide after slide of proof that the great men and women of Europe were black and Jewish. Jean points to the evidence: woolly hair, cornrows, dark skin. King James, he says, black man, looks like Ned Dinkins, whoever that is. Queen Elizabeth, obviously Queen Elizabeth I, not Queen Elizabeth II, was a light-skinned sister. Henry VIII, black man. Saint Nicholas, Santa Claus, black man. Or the original Saint Nicholas that the Santa Claus myth is based on, black man. Ivan the Terrible, black man. A slide pops up with an instinct etching of a man in a wig. You know, those wigs that the pre-Victorians used to wear, like Mozart, Beethoven, etc., etc. They had to wash continually because bugs used to reside in them, and then they go into the ear, hence being called earwigs. Go check out the history of that and those old wigs. They used to use them in the old courts, Victorian days, pre-Victorian days, etc., etc. Especially in English and American culture. A slide pops up with an indistinct etching of a man in a wig. So it'll be a drawing on it. Jean says, who do we have here? It's Mozart, black man. Next, Beethoven. We were saying he was black. It's not so hard to believe that black people write music, he says. Well, that's pretty obvious, isn't it? A modern day Beethoven would be Prince. Okay. One woman near the author, seated near the author, turns to her friend periodically to nod and say, "It's true, it's true." Well, yeah, if they're convincing you it's true, yeah, you think it's evident because of the pictures they show, etc., which could be falsified, so you just nod and say, "Yeah, it's true, it's true." So how did it all end? Jean says that blacks remained in power in Europe until 1711, when Charlemagne came. Then during the Renaissance, white families spent thousands of dollars to erase the names of our forefathers, or black forefathers. They used acid to bleach the paintings of black kings and queens, hammers to chip the broad noses from marble statues. Well, you've got to look for the evidence of that it actually happened, where these paintings actually bleached, and who can provide that evidence. Jean finishes and returns to the podium to Hamakal, who explains how black Hebrews ended up as slaves in America. Okay, I wonder how he explains that, because I remember seeing a documentary or video years ago of 3 top professors, American professors, who said that history is all wrong, that supposedly there were black men living in America, proven by an Indian on another video, where a documentary where a guy was looking at some rock faces and there was an Indian, native Indian, accompanying him, and he says, "Well, it looks like on this stone etching, these paintings, cave painting, on this rock or whatever, that these people were black." And the Indian says, "Yeah, that's right, they probably were black because the Indians fought against them and beat them, slowly killed them off. They were here before us, before the native Indians, right?" So yeah, they were probably there before the Indians came, these native Indians. And apparently there's a movement of the Moors, and their top teacher who said years ago that the Moors were originally there. These Europeans didn't like that, so they shipped them to Africa to breed them with the Africans on slave ships. Then they brought them back and then used them as slaves throughout America. Okay. So they're saying basically what you've been taught in the American schools is actually incorrect, that the Africans were these Moors, were the people that already, black people that already were in America, shipped off to Africa, bred with the Africans, and then brought back as slaves. So the reverse. Okay. This Hamkal states, "We'll go into a position we're more familiar with today." He says, starting in 1619, he explains Africans began selling their immigrant population, the Hebrew Israelites, into slavery. Their fate was a punishment for disobeying God. "We have sinned, and that is the reason the crown has fallen," Hamkal says. For the next hour, they watch clips from a version of Uncle Tom's Cabin. That's a recommended film. It's totally horrible, based on fact of how these slave traders treated these Africans and how they referred to them, etc., etc. It was very, very racist, very, very cruel, but yeah, it's a recommended film if you want to know supposedly the truth about what happened to these slaves, through these European slave traders and owners. For the next hour, they watched clips from a version of Uncle Tom's Cabin that shows slaves drooling over the babble of Christian preachers and welcoming the abuses of their patriarchs. The film reinforces a central theme of the ICGJC, that mainstream Christianity was right next to the whip as a tool of oppression. You know, these people just twisted the scriptures to their own motives or agendas, right? Make money, you know, have slaves that do the work for you, sit back, let them do all the work, and you reap the harvest, right? Get all the money, etc., etc. Sell and exchange slaves, and so forth. The session winds up with 45 minutes of questions and answers. One woman tells the men she's struggling with some of the revelations, or revealings of what they're talking about, right? Being from England myself, or herself, she says for some reason she was having a difficult time grasping Shakespeare, or Shakespeare's Victorian speak, isn't it? Shakespeare, and Beethoven and Mozart being black. Jean responds by talking about the story of Romeo and Juliet, which he says was about two black lovers from opposite sides of town. Even though you haven't been taught it, he says, why don't you take it from the prophets? They've done the work for you. The woman nods. I do receive, she says, but sometimes when you've been indoctrinated, you resist. It's true. This author approached the woman after the session ends. She looks to be in her 40s at least and is surrounded by 3 girls and 2 boys. All hers, she says. It turns out she's not really sceptical. She tells the author she's working through unlearning the lies she accepted in a lifetime attending Christian churches. The indoctrinations, right? She says she's a minister but won't say where. Christian preachers never gave her a satisfactory explanation for the suffering of daily life. For her, the worst comes from the bondage of debt. Of course. The worst comes from the bondage of debt. Of course. But the Israelites, she says, had an answer. By them speaking, her spirit was illuminated, she said. The next day, this author called Bishop Jean to go over a few areas of confusion. First of all, he wanted to know how the Mexicans got here from the old world.